protests began as a series of price hikes and tax increases that are related to the 2018 finance bill or the budget. These are part of a larger package of austerity measures that were recommended by the International Monetary Fund as well as other international donors, and they went into effect on January 1st. So we've seen the country has been really at kind of a low simmer for some time due to the severe economic hardship and a growing dissatisfaction of the people with the government. But this bill, the fact that these measures went into effect on January 1st, gave people something tangible to protest against. And people are going into the streets because that's what has worked for them in the past. They don't see the government as the answer of the person who's able to help them. The protests have been widespread, but they remain relatively small. But they actually have been a lot more violent than we've seen in the recent past. On the one hand, you're seeing the protesters engage in more violence, engage in looting, and in one case they burned down a police station. But the security forces are also responding much more forcefully than usual. They're using batons, they're using tear gas, even in downtown Tunis. We've also seen close to 1,000 arrests of protesters, and human rights groups have accused these arrests of being largely arbitrary and saying that they're just arresting people because they're protesting, not because they're actually engaging in behavior that would be arrestable. The protests are also highly politicized. Right now we're in a campaign climate with municipal elections that are scheduled for May. And we've seen Prime Minister Shahid come out and say that 2018 is going to be probably the most difficult year for Tunisia economically. And he's pretty much asking people to just bear with this short-term pain in order to reach long-term gain and long-term economic stability. But the public's not buying it. And so we've seen opposition political parties vocally support the protests, asking protesters to go into the streets. And then on the flip side, we see Prime Minister Shahid accusing the opposition parties of exploiting the protests for their own political gain. The government really can't go back on the finance bill or these other austerity measures if they want to keep funding flowing from the IMF and the international community. What they can do, and one thing they're trying to do, is to come up with some more short-term measures that will help cushion the pain of austerity for the poorest Tunisians. But just as important is refraining from responding with a heavy hand. This force that we're seeing used against the protesters is only going to add fuel to the fire and backfire in the long run.